Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, wherever your time zone may find you. My name's Claire Hobby from TCO Development, and welcome to today's webinar. This is part of our Sustainable IT webinar series that we've been doing from the beginning of the year. This is our fourth in the series, and thanks for joining us. Today we're going to take a little look at a new Sustainable IT purchasing guidance for institutional purchases that's been put together by the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council based here in the United States, and we will also be taking a little look at some of the current challenges associated with IT products, particularly from the chemical side and the social responsibility side. From TCO Development, we've been pleased to be involved with the SPLC process as far as developing some of the guidance for IT products and services, along with a number of other stakeholders. So we're pleased to take a little deep dive and see what's included. So as I said, our agenda today is a preview of the guidance version 2.0. And Christina Mackin from Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council will be joining us to talk about that in just a moment. And our own Nicholas Rydell from TCO Development will be taking a look at some of those challenges that we mentioned, specifically connected to IT hardware. Our presenters, once again, Christina Mackin, who is Director of Programs at the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council, and Nicholas Rydell, who's Director of TCO Certified, Sustainability Criteria and Test Methods Expert here at TCO Development. We'll be taking some questions following each of the presentations. If we don't get to your question today, feel free to email us via our website at tcodevelopment.com, and we'll be able to answer that question personally for you. With that, it's my pleasure to hand over to Christina Mackin from Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here. Thank you for joining the webinar today. As Claire mentioned, my name is Christina Mackin. I am the Director of Programs with the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about our guidance version 2.0 that we are in the process of launching starting last month at our SPLC Summit in Washington, D.C., and continuing to roll out the guidance over the course of the next month. So first, I'm going to spend a little bit of time just introducing SPLC, who we are, what we do. I'll give you an overview of the guidance as a whole. I know many of you are interested specifically in the IT hardware and services guidance. That's one component of the overall guidance that we have produced and continue to work on. And then there will be a short amount of time for Q&A before Nicholas speaks, and then at the end of the presentation there will be some more time. So if you do have a question for me, as Claire mentioned, feel free to put it into the chat box. If we can pick it up in that brief Q&A, we'll do that, and we'll save then everything else for the end of the call. So just to touch briefly on who is the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council, we are a nonprofit organization based in the U.S. That was founded in 2013 by a group of about 30 organizations who came together in a founder circle to put the resources and put the effort forward to advance an organization that could look at providing sustainable purchasing recommendations to institutions, institutional purchasers being government, private sector, corporate purchasers, universities, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not looking at consumer purchasing necessarily. We're really focused on institutional level purchasing. So these founders came together. SPLC formed a number of strategic partnerships at that time and continues to do so. And we launched a member-based organization back in the summer of 2013. Since then, we've built a very broad coalition of members across the United States as well as across the world We want our organization to be as global as possible. At this point, as you'll see, looking at our membership list, it's predominantly North American, but we are hoping and always working to expand that. Our membership represents over $200 billion in institutional spending every year, so we see that as a growing number and a way that we can really leverage the collective effort of our membership. So why are we focused on institutional purchasing? In the U.S., institutional purchasing, by our estimates, represents about $10 trillion of the U.S. economy. In some way, institutional purchasing directly or indirectly touches $10 trillion or 2/3 of that economy. And we see this as the largest professionally managed demand signal that's driving not just the U.S. economy, but the global economy. And that also means that it's driving a really massive amount of environmental, social, and economic impacts, good and bad, across the world. And so to us, to our organization, it's very important that we leverage this, this particular demand signal and that we take advantage of the fact that it is professionally managed and that there is a group of people who we can target and get to shift the way that they behave when they purchase. So again, we have a very large opportunity for collective influence over these purchasers, those folks who act within the procurement profession. So that's just a little bit of background on how we've come together, our membership, and those organizations that we've been engaging on wanting to help us influence the way they purchase and improve the way they purchase from a sustainability perspective. Really demanded of us that we create a clear set of guidance for them to work from. So back in early 2015, we launched an initial version of this guidance, version 1.0, that we put out for a pilot and collected feedback on for a period of about 6 months. So that went until about summer of last year. And since then, we've taken that feedback and we've been working on version 2, which is what we're launching at this point. So as I mentioned when I started, in addition to the IT hardware and services guidance, which we have a lot of in this guidance, there are several other sections that make up the document itself. Chapter 1, just to touch briefly, is the preamble that makes the case for sustainable purchasing at the institutional level and provides information on how organizations can really think strategically about how purchasing fits into their overall organizational strategic sustainability initiatives. Chapter 2 is called Create the Program. This chapter is geared toward a professional which we've named the champion of the sustainable purchasing program. They're probably at a higher level in the organization. They may not be the professional making the exact purchases every day, but they're probably managing that team or at a level higher than that. And it helps provide them with guidance around having a vision for what their sustainable purchasing program will become, enlisting stakeholders in the process of building out that program, and then getting the necessary commitments to get it off the ground. Chapter 3, Run the Program, is about really launching the continuous improvement cycle and the project cycle that allows organizations to explore their purchasing, understand where the major impacts are, and then start making improvements. And Chapter 4, Category Guidance, is by far the longest section. I'll show some detail in a moment, but this is where we get into specific recommendations on how to improve the sustainability attributes of an organization's purchasing in a whole variety of different categories. So I also mentioned that we're introducing version 2 to you today, and just to briefly touch on what's new from version 1, we've made a number of significant revisions to our purchasing category guidance over the past year. As Claire mentioned, she sits on our IT hardware and services technical advisory group and has been really instrumental to helping to advance revisions to the guidance in that particular section. We have 8 technical advisory groups across a number of different purchasing categories who have been distilling the feedback that we received in our pilot and making revisions as a result. We've really tried to focus on exploring strategies and implementation as much as possible, and more so than in version 1, making sure it's very clear to organizations what the concrete actions are that they can take to improve their impact. We've added some additional purchasing categories, which I'll touch on. We've improved access of the document and ease of use. We have a much more dynamic, web-friendly version of the document rather than a large PDF. And we've also expanded specifically a section that's very technical to procurement around spend analysis and how to really effectively identify and prioritize what areas of your spend you should be focusing on. So I've spoken to this a little bit already. Chapter 2 helps organizations get the program and resource commitment they need for a sustainable purchasing program. Chapter 3 helps organizations go through that prioritization process and then set up the improvement process. All of our purchasing category sections, including the IT guidance, focuses on a process which we've referred to as a strategy cycle. So this is really a plan, do, check, act process that's pretty well known to project management. We gave it a little bit of a sustainable purchasing or purchasing flair and put it more into the procurement context. I'm not going to touch on all of these sections when I run through the IT guidance simply because I don't have a whole ton of time to go through all of those pieces. But what's important to note is that we not only provide guidance on, use this eco-label and not that eco-label, or buy this instead of that. We really seek to set organizations up around an entire process that they can start from square one and say, what am I buying? What are the attributes associated with that? How can I improve it? Make a plan, implement that plan, track and report their metrics, and really kind of continue that phase, those phases in a continuous improvement method. So each of our purchasing categories, which you see on the screen, is included in the guidance and is structured into that strategy cycle. So within IT hardware and services, which I'll get into in more detail in a moment, you'll see that there's a variety of subcategories, including personal computers, mobile phones, imaging equipment, televisions, and data centers. We have a host of other sections, including professional services, food and beverages, construction and renovation, wood and agri-fiber products, and others. It's important to note from the perspective of SPLC, when we say sustainable purchasing, we do not just mean environmentally preferable purchasing, which in the United States has really tended to be the first foray for many organizations into the concept of sustainability. Sustainability tends to be equated with environmentally preferable. And as an organization, SPLC recognizes that sustainability, yes, absolutely incorporates environmentally preferable attributes and impacts, but there are also significant systemic, social, and economic impacts and factors that really need to be taken into account if we want purchasing organizations to holistically address sustainability, and that there are real risks within the purchasing supply chains that can affect businesses that are in the social and economic realm that need to be taken into account. In addition to having a holistic view of how we talk about sustainability, we also try to have a holistic view for the types of recommendations that we make to organizations. So again, we're not just looking at a buy this, buy products with this label and not that one, or look for this specific energy use intensity of a particular product. We take what is referred to as a category management approach to our recommendations, which means that it goes beyond just those product substitution or supplier substitution recommendations and includes things like demand reduction strategies and ways to be more efficient with the products that you buy so that you can actually buy fewer products overall. How to make process changes or behavior changes within your organization, within policies or management to be able to, again, function more efficiently, do more with less on the products and services that you're buying. So let's jump into some specifics on the IT hardware and services guidance. So again, I mentioned there's a few different subsections that our guidance divides into: personal computers, mobile phones, imaging equipment, televisions, and data centers. And one of the things that our technical advisory group spent a lot of time on over the course of the past several months was really trying to, from a comprehensive perspective, document the many, many impacts associated with the IT hardware supply chain, which has a number of impacts in every phase of the life cycle. And it was very important to SPLC as well as the technical advisory group that a very thorough job was done on assembling this list. And I will note on this slide, you're seeing these impacts as a bulleted list. In our guidance, it's kind of multiple pages documenting the details on each of these different impacts and really providing useful information to purchasers to understand why, one, simply thinking about the environmental impacts, if we're thinking about sustainability and limiting it to environmental impacts, we are really missing a lot of the overall impacts associated with IT purchasing. And two, if we're only focused on use phase and an organization is thinking, I'm in this only to save money, and so I'm thinking about, how to just simply reduce the energy that goes into running my IT products, those organizations are missing a whole lot of really the impacts that as a purchaser and an end user of these products, they have a responsibility in addressing. So given all of these impacts, the technical advisory group came up with a variety of recommendations to help reduce these the overall impacts. So first, and I mentioned we have that strategy cycle that has the different phases. Within the analysis phase, there's a number of steps around simply collecting and analyzing data on current IT products use and purchasing. So as a first step with a team internal to the organization, gathering data on what IT products and equipment are purchased, what's the brand, the model, what sustainability attributes or labels are associated with them, what are the criteria, for example, for a mobile phone to be issued to an employee, what are the policies that exist around sustainable print management, or the policies that exist around power reduction in the organization, and really thinking through at a holistic level, what do we know about these purchases, what do we know about the use of these products internal to the organization, how can we better marry what we're buying and what we're using with the end user's needs from a functionality and a technology perspective, and in doing so, can we reduce are there opportunities within that to reduce our impact? And then there's a final step within the analysis section for the organization to set goals for impact reduction. So this could be around potentially targeting a specific standard or eco-label that they want to shift their purchasing toward. It could be around goals around setting up an infrastructure for better repair and upgrade policies within the organization and getting the staffing necessary to be able to accommodate that. Or it could also simply be around, finding ways to improve the ways in which they dispose of their IT products and making sure that where possible they are responsibly disposing of or extending the life of their IT products. So then to look at some of the impact reduction strategies, just briefly, that we touch on in the guidance. Again, first, we want organizations to really create and implement strong organizational policies around product upgrade, product repair, as well as disposal. So again, this is not a recommendation specifically about purchasing, it's a management and an operations recommendation, and that's, we feel, a very important foundation for the rest of the recommendations to flow. We also very heavily recommend that new product purchases or leases come with sustainability certifications for mobile phones, for personal computers. TCO Certified is a program that we see as a very strong certification program that in our guidance we are encouraging purchasers to use. We also provide in our guidance a comparison table between programs like TCO Certified and other programs that exist, like EPEAT and Energy Star, which are pretty popular in the United States. And it goes impact by impact, and each certification program can demonstrate which impacts that they cover. So a purchaser can simply look at that comparison table and say, this social or labor impact within the supply chain is very important to me. I see that TCO Certified covers it. I want to make sure that that my purchasing is addressing it, and so I want to shift my purchasing in this direction to this certification. We also are very excited to be promoting a number of kind of emerging initiatives that are going on in the market. One of them is the Challenge to the Global Electronics Industry, which is around helping to promote better health and safety of workers from a chemical management perspective. And so one of our recommendations is around pushing suppliers of IT products and services to complete a questionnaire from the folks over at Electronics Challenge to really get a feel for the extent to which suppliers understand the chemical inventories of what's going into their products, and being able to communicate those, or to ask of their suppliers to also build that understanding, really getting the transparency in the market more, making the market more transparent in a way in which that it is currently not. And so that is one of the one strategy that we are promoting as a way that purchasers can engage with their suppliers. And I believe Nicholas is going to talk more about not the challenge itself, but the issues associated with chemicals up in the supply chain. We also encourage purchasers to promote responsible mining initiatives to their manufacturers. One thing that we found in doing our work is that really there's a gap in the market around sustainability certifications or standards that address the many impacts associated with the extraction phase. One initiative in particular, the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, is in the process of developing a standard that does address those extraction phase impacts. And so we have a recommendation around some supplier engagement for purchasers around IRMA and around a couple other extraction initiatives. Within our guidance, we also touch on really explaining some of the major challenges in the industry that purchasers will face, results in how to kind of track their metrics, and then recommendations around case studies and other resources that they can use to start shifting their purchase more sustainably. I believe that takes me to just about 20 minutes, so I'm at the end of my presentation. Claire, I believe we're taking a couple minutes for questions here before shifting to Nicholas.
Sure, we can take a couple of quick questions. Thanks, Christina. We're very pleased to be supporting the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council guidance here, and I think I would add that obviously it gives purchasers some very practical guidance, but I think the detail offers also a good educational piece as well, and giving some good information about what are the issues and the impacts that we're having to deal with in this product category. So thanks again, Christina. One question here. What kind of feedback or data will you be looking to from the purchasers who use the guidance? So I guess will purchasers be giving you feedback on their experience of using the guidance, any data collection activities, for example?
Yes, absolutely. And actually the new method that we have for delivering our guidance within our SPLC's online member community allows anyone, whether they're a purchaser or a supplier or a civil society organization, to very easily embed comments directly into, think of it like Facebook, where there's a post where you can see, the recommendations around the IT guidance, and then there's, you can leave a comment, and it kind of, the commentary kind of flows underneath the set of recommendations that can be expanded or, truncated if you're just trying to read the guidance. The type of feedback that we're looking for, especially from purchasers, is, are we communicating these recommendations in a way that helps you do your job better and easier? So many of our members come to us as purchasers and say, I have these very strong demands coming down from my management, from the executive level. They're saying to, that we need to do more sustainable purchasing, that we need to address sustainability in any category, maybe not even IT. And I don't know how to do that. There's too many choices out there, and I need clarity on what to do. And so what we want to know as an organization is our guidance providing you that clarity? Are we doing it in a way that resonates well with the language that procurement professionals speak? So are we getting things as close to solicitation language as possible to be embedded into bids and contracts, et cetera, et cetera? And then certainly from anyone in the market, whether they're a purchaser or not, we want them to reflect more generally as well on, are the recommendations something that, are they actionable within the market? Are you putting out an RFP for products to meet certain requirements and no supplier is responding because no one can meet those requirements? We want to know that too, because then we will need to think about our guidance and kind of calibrate accordingly. So there's a number of different types of feedback that we're looking for.
Okay, thanks, Christina. Another question here, is the guidance publicly available or only available to SPLC members?
We have an excerpted version that is publicly available, but the full document is a primary benefit of being a member of SPLC.
Okay. One more question I'm hoping we have time for. This is about some of the definitions. Can you share the definitions for the different requirements? So one example is, how do you define sustainable compensation, for example?
Oh, interesting. So specific to IT, in this case, the IT, like the manufacturing. How would we define sustainable compensation?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. So in a lot of cases, we don't necessarily, in our work, get into that level of detail. We rely upon, as often as we can, we rely upon the work of others. So for example, if there is guidance developed or standards developed, or even core principles around what sustainable compensation looks like on a regional level, or kind of what a baseline sustainable compensation should be, we would rely on those definitions. So specific to that question, SPLC has not developed our own specific answer or definition to what is sustainable compensation. I hope that helps answer the question, but the short answer is whenever possible, we rely on experts in that area to give us that information that we would then cite.
Okay. Thanks, Christina. And I would assume if people have more questions, they can go ahead and email you at the email address on the screen right now?
Yes, please do.
Perfect. Thanks again. So now I'd like to hand over to Nicholas Rydell from TCO Development, who will be able to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in the chemical space and also in the social responsibility space concerning IT products. Over to you, Nicholas.
All right. Hello, everybody. So I will go right into the core of our work. And first of all, I would like to just also say that I think it's really nice what SPLC is doing. I think there is a great need of this help out there. I think that there is it's good that some organization is looking at the different alternatives that are out there for purchasers, because there is a jungle actually. So I would like to spend the next 15 minutes to tell you about some experiences that we've learned the last years, and I would like to start with the most important challenges for sustainable IT purchases today that I can see. Those two are the human rights violations in the manufacturing of IT products, and the problem is that most manufacturing sites in Asia and particularly China are violating national and international labor law. The second problem that we see and challenge if you want to purchase more sustainable IT products is that many IT products contain dangerous and unknown chemicals. And these can have unknown effects to human health and also to the environment. And this is a big problem. So let's go into detail for these two topics. The human rights violation in the manufacturing of the product depend mostly on three things. The first thing is that the governments in these countries try to attract manufacturing sites, and they try to attract brand owners to produce and manufacture their products in their countries. And to do that, they do not always enforce the local law. This is a problem because as a brand owner, you're basically obliged to implement and enforce a law within your factory compound that the government does not enforce outside of that factory. And your competitors does maybe not enforce this law, which makes it really difficult to compete. So this is a problem that is all the way up in the governmental level, and it's very difficult for single companies to handle it by themselves. Another big reason for this problem is that there is a very high level of temporary workforce used in the IT industry. These are people who travel from rural areas to work in these factories, or even from other countries to work in the factories, and many of these people work only for a few months or 1 or 2 years, and then they go home again with the money that they gained during this time. And these people normally don't have fixed contracts. They are hired temporary, and it's very easy for the factories to negotiate bad contracts with them. The third challenge for the IT industry is the supply chain that is incredibly long and complex. If you compare a notebook with a coffee bean or a banana. It's much more complex to review and even know your supply chain for an IT product. It's a very much bigger challenge, and some brand owners don't even know their third or fourth tier suppliers. Most brand owners know their first tier suppliers, and some know the second tier suppliers. But for IT products, the supply chain is incredibly complex. So let's look at the next big challenge. This is the chemicals that are used in IT products today. And the reasons for this is that the legislation is and has been very slow and inefficient for many, many years. The legislation works on a principle that unknown substances are okay to use until someone proves that they are dangerous. And as it costs a lot of money to analyze a substance, and it takes a lot of time to analyze a substance, there are very few substances that are analyzed and proven to be bad or good to use. So this whole principle is not scientific. To use something before you know if this substance is bad, it's not the scientific approach. No one will go out in the forest and eat a mushroom you don't know what it is. So this is a problem. The third reason for this is that the chemical industry is permeated with confidentiality. It's extremely difficult to know what is inside a plastic. Not even brand owners. Many brand owners don't even know which substances that are inside the plastic, because the whole supply chain of the plastic part and its different ingredients are covered by confidentiality agreements. So basically the chemical supplier can put whatever they want in the plastic, and the brand owner don't even know this in some cases. So our experiences and observations with social responsible manufacturing is something that I will talk more in detail about, because I think that is the thing that is the most challenging thing now for purchasers. If you are prepared to set criteria on social responsible manufacturing in your procurement, there are some really important things that you have to consider. If you use a certification, many of these things are taken care of, but if you decide to do this yourself, these are some important topics that you should consider and make sure that you have in order before you set these criteria. So, first of all, you need to have enough competence within your organizations to formulate the criteria in a clear way, so that the brand owners who bid on your contract can understand and comply with them, and also so that you can handle questions and consequences. You need the competence of how audits are conducted in factories, how the situation looks like in China, for example, what type of violations are reasonable, and what kind of corrective actions that are efficient for different types of violations. You need to be able to answer when the brand owners and manufacturing sites asks you about your social responsible manufacturing criteria. Then you need to have relationships with the factories that produce these products and the brand owners, because sooner or later you're going to end up with some violations in the factories, and you need to start negotiate with these companies how to solve these problems. And you need relationship with the people who are involved, who are in charge of the factories, and the clients of those factories, the brand owners, to be able to achieve improvements in this industry. Then you need to follow up your criteria. If you set criteria on, for example, the ILO core conventions, you need to follow up those criteria during the whole contract period. So over all those years of your contract, you need to go and verify that those criteria are fulfilled. You can do that by hiring a auditor to go to the factories and review the sites, or you can go there yourself if you have enough competence. And then you need to review the audit reports that you receive from the factories and decide what kind of actions that need to be taken by the factory. Other criteria like chemical criteria or health and safety, it's often enough to test the product before you buy it. But for social responsible manufacturing, the situation in the factory can change any day. So you cannot rely on one test in the beginning of the contract. You need to follow up this testing during the whole contract period. Then when you find some violations in the factories, you need to have a corrective action plan set up by the brand owner and by the factory management. And it's necessary to work with these corrective action plans and to get all the violations solved within the time. And that's also when you need some experts within your organization to handle that work. And finally, you need to have some consequences in your contract so that if the contract is violated, if some of the criteria you've set up are not fulfilled, there need to be some kind of consequences for the factory and for the brand owner who supplied those products for you. This is also a driving force to ensure that corrective action plans are implemented in time. So for TCO Certified, we have a system that is taking care of these things, and we do it in this way. All brand owners sign a legally binding license agreement with TCO Development, and in that license agreement they are obliged to fulfill all our criteria. There are some penalty fees and other actions that we can take if brand owners do not fulfill any of our criteria. All brand owners should have a serious code of conduct and ensure that this code of conduct is communicated and implemented in the whole supply chain. And they prove that to us by sending in different kind of evidence like translations into local languages, like workshop protocols and other things, so that we see that their first-tier suppliers have received and understood the code of conduct. Then they should have audits conducted on each final assembly factory at least one time every 3 years, and they should have a list of all of the factories that they are using, and on the list they should put in the audit date so we can see that there is a audit system in place to audit all of the factories regularly. One of these audits they should send to us every year for review, and then we look at the audit to see that the audits are conducted in a good enough to a good enough standard, that the audits fulfill our criteria, that the auditors are qualified to do the audit, that there are third parties, that they're independent, and so on. Sometimes we see non-conformities in the audits, and then all of the non-conformities must be handled by the brand owner in a responsible way, and there should be corrective action plans implemented for the factory. Each brand owner shall appoint one senior management representative who ensures the implementation of the code of conduct, and this person is our contact window at the brand owner. This person is in charge of the social responsible manufacturing at all of their suppliers, and they report to TCO Development annually what kind of work they do to ensure that they fulfill TCO Certified. This is also the person that we contact when something happened, when there is a violation and we need to push a factory to improve the situation. The senior management representative should also report to TCO Development every year what type of proactive work they do to minimize the risk of non-conformities. And this is work beyond our criteria. And this is information that we use for our risk assessment, because every year we also do spot checks on all of the factories that are certified to see that all of them fulfill the criteria. The brand owner shall also have a public conflict mineral policy to ensure to describe how they work and avoid negative impact by conflict minerals in their products. And they should also have a management system for conflict minerals according to the OECD guideline, or they can be part in an in-region initiative. And this is an management system according to the OECD guideline is very complex. You need to map up all of your supply chain. Some brand owners manage to do this, but not all brand owners are there yet. Another way to work with conflict mineral is to support in-region initiatives in Congo who are working to make it more difficult for the militant groups to control these mines. The corrective action plan is the most important part of the criteria on social responsible manufacturing. It will also be the most important part for you if you set these criteria yourself. You must be prepared that you will find violations, and you must be prepared to push for corrective actions and to follow up these corrective actions all the way. TCO certified is a third-party independent certification that follow the ISO 14024 Type 1. This means that we are doing our work in a transparent way according to international standards. We are owned by a non-profit organization, and we are here to help you if you prefer that. So, Claire, back to you.
Thanks, Niklas. And as you see here, if you want more information about the TCO Certified program, you can email us there or go to tcodevelopment.com. And I have a question, I think it's for you, Niklas, about the requirement to handle non-conformities in the whole supply chain. How do you verify that corrective actions are completed?
Yeah, so when a violation is found, and our criteria cover the whole supply chain, but the brand owner is only obliged to search for non-conformities in the first-tier factories currently. But if a violation is found further down the supply chain, it must be handled. In that case, a corrective action plan is implemented, and this corrective action plan is reviewed by an independent expert who decide if the corrective action plan is considered to be efficient or less efficient to solve the problem. And after the corrective action plan is finalized, we demand to have a new third-party audit at the factory to verify that the corrective action plan was efficient.
Thanks, Niklas. One more question, and this may be relevant for both you, Niklas, and Christina. Maybe I'll start with Christina. It's a question about how often the guidance will be updated. And I can maybe add to that. I know we're thinking of some initiatives that are still under development, such as the mining assurance and some others that are still under development. Is there a plan for continuously updating the guidance, Christina?
Yes, that is our approach. So we had our first major release of the guidance, as I mentioned, in February of 2015. This year we're releasing a major update to that document, and as other resources or new information becomes available and we learn about it, we're able to make periodic updates to the guidance. So we really want it to stay as relevant as possible. And we encourage folks to submit that feedback and those comments to us so we can make sure that we're keeping up with that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Niklas, did you want to talk to updating criteria schedules and how often that happens?
Yeah, we have a 3-year cycle on TCO certified criteria, and as we are only dealing with IT products, we believe that the only way to keep pace with the market is to update the criteria on a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years, the first year we have a kind of analyze period where we collect ideas and suggestions from our stakeholders, the buyers and the IT industry. The second year we do all our research projects and develop the criteria, and the third year we send the criteria on draft for all the industry and stakeholders to comment on, and then it's launched, and then a new 3-year period is initiated. And in that way we can keep the pace with the industry, and we can set our criteria limits so that 30 to 50% of the industry can pass. If the development period is longer than 3 years, we believe that too many products can pass the criteria, and the criteria becomes inefficient in pushing the industry in a more sustainable direction.
Thanks, Nicholas. I can maybe just add there that after the summer, so around August-September timeframe, we'll be actually doing some outreach to all stakeholders, inviting them to engage in our kickoff process for the next generation TCO certified. So we'll definitely get back to you soon. Hopefully we have time for one more quick question before finishing up today. I think this is again for you, Nicholas. Talking about the annual report on proactive work, so the review with the brand owner, what type of information are you looking for in that review? How do you verify what good looks like, such as in proactive activities by the brand owner?
Yeah, so we have a questionnaire with 20 questions. This is an official document, so you can download it from our website or ask me and I can send it to you. Those are questions that go beyond our criteria. It's about freedom of labor, of unions. It's about discrimination. It's about many things. And beyond, except for those 20 questions, we also want to ensure that the senior management representative has enough authority and is senior enough to be able to handle the questions that may arise from us during the year. If there are violations in a factory, for example, this person should have the authority to negotiate with the factory, for example. So we also ask questions about audits that have been done. We might want to see audit reports. We want to see that this person has access to the audits and to contact information of their first-tier suppliers. So this is basically what this review is about, and it's an annual review of this person.
Great, thanks, Nicholas. I think that brings us to very close to time here today. Thanks for all your great questions, everyone. Feel free to go to either sustainablepurchasing.org or tcodevelopment.com for more information about sustainable IT, sustainable purchasing. So thanks to both our speakers today. Thanks to everyone for attending, and we wish you a productive remainder of the week. Thanks again.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks, everyone.